guessing, there are hundreds of sandwiches, but I'll stick to a baker's dozen or so. Think of the different kinds of breads that can be stuffed with just about anything, plus cultural additions. We'll use the Encyclopedia of Sandwiches as a source. Here we go, roughly in chronological order with a focus on American favorites. Origins are often more legend than fact. The earliest mention of panini was a 16th century Italian cookbook suggesting it became common in Milan. Traditionally, it's made with Italian bread or a baguette, grilled or toasted, cut horizontally, and filled with deli items like cheese, ham, and salami. The submarine, regionally called hoagie, hero, sub, and more, is made from a cylindrical bread roll split lengthwise and filled with meats, cheeses, veggies, and condiments. The various forms were developed by Italian Americans and others in the 19th and 20th centuries, particularly in the Northeast. There are multiple histories, ingredients, and more. Grilled cheese is a family favorite. It goes back at least to 1861 when an English recipe was included using bread, butter, and Cheshire cheese cooked in an oven. Our version uses wheat or white bread with Munster cheese cooked in a pan using lots of butter. Pastrami on rye, usually served with mustard and kosher dill pickles, was popular at Jewish delis in New York City, said to be created by a Lithuanian immigrant in 1888. This became a New York sandwich must at Katz's Deli, famously overstuffed with pastrami. Muffaletta is an Italian sandwich using Sicilian sesame bread filled with cold cuts, cheese, and olive salad, including olive oil, olives, tomatoes, peppers, onions, and more. Brought to New Orleans by Sicilian migrants by 1906. Sloppy Joe is ground beef, onions, tomato sauce, and seasoning on a bun and messy to eat. One legend claimed Havana, Cuba bar owner Jose Sloppy Joe created it in 1917, a bar frequented by Errol Flynn and Ernest Hemingway. 20 years later, Hemingway convinced a Key West bar owner to change the name of his bar to Sloppy Joe's. An alternative story claims Sioux City, Iowa, in the 1930s by a cook named Joe as the time and place. The po' boy came from New Orleans and possibly named by restaurant owners Benny and Clovis Martin in the 1920s. It is made from French bread called oyster loaves. The meat can also be roast beef, ham, or seafood like shrimp or crab, plus tomatoes, pickles, lettuce, and mayonnaise. Legend has the poor boy feeding striking New Orleans streetcar workers in 1929. The BLT has the obvious ingredients, all common after the Columbian Exchange, but the earliest evidence of this sandwich starts in the 20th century. A Good Housekeeping cookbook from 1903 has a recipe that included the three. Then a 1928 cookbook has several bacon sandwiches. However, the BLT became popular after World War II when supermarkets made the ingredients readily available. Apparently, the use of BLT initials started in the 1970s. Ham is basic and could be one of the earliest sandwiches served hot or cold on any kind of bread, with cheese of some kind. Ham and cheese sandwiches are basic to many cultures under a variety of names, at least from the 19th century. Ham and cheese were served at ball games in the 19th century before hot dogs were introduced. The Cuban was a variation of a ham and cheese, probably started in Florida for workers using Cuban bread with added pork and condiments. I have to introduce the sandwich invented for the comic strip Blondie, claimed to be made by husband Dagwood Bumstead. First presented in 1936. It was drawn with anything imaginable in a sandwich. There are plenty more, but there are two biggies, hamburgers and hot dogs, that have their own interesting but strange stories, beginning next time on Food History and Mystery.